Welcome to our channel. Imagine a Washington quarter worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sounds unbelievable, right? In this video, we'll reveal the ultra-rare Washington quarters that are hidden gems, sought after by collectors around the world. Let me tell you a story. A story of a coin that most people have likely passed around countless times, tucked away in wallets, tossed into coin jars, or slid into vending machines without a second thought. It's a coin that seems ordinary, until you realize just how extraordinary it really is. This is the story of the 1996 Washington quarter. And by the time we're done, you might just check your change drawer, hoping to find one for yourself. Our journey begins in the heart of American history, when coins were more than just currency. They were statements, symbols, tiny portraits of national pride that passed from hand to hand, carrying stories with them. And in this case, the Washington quarter tells a particularly compelling tale. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932, designed to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the nation's first president. It was meant to be a temporary issue, replacing the standing Liberty quarter for just 1 year. But as fate would have it, Washington's image struck a chord with the public. His stern, noble profile, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, gave the coin an iconic look that lasted for decades. What began as a commemorative piece quickly became a fixture in American currency. Now fast forward more than 6 decades later, to 1996. The year was marked by the buzz of a new millennium approaching, a strong economy, and a cultural shift embracing both tradition and innovation. In Denver, Colorado, the U.S. Mint was churning out coins at a staggering pace. Among the many coins minted that year was the humble 1996 Washington quarter. Over 900 million of them. In fact, at first glance, nothing about the 1996 quarter seems unusual. It bears the familiar design, George Washington's stoic face on the obverse and the regal eagle on the reverse, perched with wings spread, arrows clutched tightly in its talons, an olive branch at its feet. It was the standard image Americans had come to recognize and rely on. But what separates this coin from the rest is not something you'll find in the average quarter. You see, in numismatics, the art and science of collecting coins, rarity isn't always about how few coins were made. It's about how few remain in pristine, untouched condition. It's about the details. The luster. The sharpness of the strike. The almost imperceptible differences that elevate one coin from pocket change to a collector's treasure. And in the case of the 1996 quarter, some of those coins were born special. Among the masses of quarters produced, a tiny number were struck with such precision, preserved in such immaculate condition, and kept untouched by circulation that they stood out. Mint state 68. That's the term collectors use. Near perfect. These quarters shimmer. Their surfaces are flawless. They hold an almost mirror-like quality. And they're breathtaking, but it's not just the condition that fuels their allure. Sometimes, errors sneak through. Double dies. Off-center strikes. Misaligned mint marks. These flaws, often seen as mistakes, make certain coins incredibly valuable. Because they're rare. Because they shouldn't exist. Because collectors crave the unusual. And the 1996 quarter has had its share of unusual variations that have become legendary in collecting circles. Over time, stories began to emerge. Tales of 1996 quarters that were commanding hundreds, then thousands, of dollars at auction. Coins that had never seen the inside of a coin jar or a gumball machine. Coins tucked away in protective cases, graded by experts, sealed for all time. One by one, their value climbed. As collectors took notice, demand surged. And with it, so did the price. Part of what makes this story so compelling is how accessible this coin once was. This wasn't a coin from the 1700s or buried treasure found in a shipwreck. This was a coin that lived in your pocket, that you might have used to buy a soda in 1996. It's a reminder that sometimes, the extraordinary hides in plain sight. That treasure doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes, it jingles. Collectors began scouring their collections, checking every quarter from 1996, especially those with the small mint mark beneath Washington's ponytail, signifying its Denver origin. Some people found coins in brilliant condition. Others discovered unusual anomalies. And the market responded accordingly. Over the years, prices for high-grade 1996 D quarters continued to rise. Coin shows, online marketplaces, and auction houses began listing them with jaw-dropping figures. And yet, the coin remained elusive in top condition. Because while over 900 million were made, only a vanishingly small number survived in near-perfect form. Fewer still featured rare minting errors, and now, the story takes an even more surprising turn. Today, in 2025, a particular 1996 D Washington quarter, graded in impeccable condition and featuring a rare mint error, has stunned collectors across the globe. This single coin, once worth just 25 cents, has recently been valued at a staggering $113,000. So next time you get change at the store, or empty your pockets at the end of the day, take a moment. Look closely. Because somewhere out there, hidden in the everyday shuffle of modern life, a 1996 D quarter might just be waiting for someone like you to recognize its worth. Not just as a piece of metal, but as a piece of history. A symbol of rarity, beauty, and unbelievable value. Up next, a coin born in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, minted in the mile-high city, and nearly forgotten by time, until one turned up decades later and flipped the entire numismatic world on its head. In 1993, life in America was rolling forward. The Cold War had officially ended, tech companies were just beginning to reshape the economy, and the Denver Mint was operating at full force. Among the hundreds of millions of coins that passed through those machines was one that would quietly begin its journey toward becoming a legend. It wasn't gold or silver. It wasn't flashy or commemorative. It was a quarter. A 25-cent piece with a tiny D mint mark that most people wouldn't look twice at. That D stood for Denver, a mint with a reputation for precision and volume. The 1993 D Washington quarter was part of an ongoing legacy, the same design that had graced pockets and cash drawers since 1932. By that point, it had become almost invisible in its familiarity. George Washington on the obverse, facing left, jaw set, calm and unwavering. The reverse, an eagle, wings raised high, perched on a bundle of arrows, flanked by olive branches, the enduring symbol of American strength and peace. To the average person, there was nothing remarkable about it. And perhaps that's what makes this story so remarkable. Because the coin that would later spark national attention was not born rare. It was born unnoticed. Mass production was the name of the game. Over 645 million quarters rolled out of Denver's presses that year. That's enough to fill entire vaults, vending machines, and sock drawers. In the numismatic world, high mintage usually means low value. After all, rarity is the collector's gold. But every now and then, even in a sea of sameness, something slips through. Something that wasn't supposed to happen. It began with whispers in the collecting community. A few quarters showing up in exceptional condition, brighter, sharper, more defined. Coins that hadn't been dulled by years of exchange or buried at the bottom of a cash register. And then came reports of something even more unusual, a slight anomaly, so subtle that only the most experienced eyes could catch it. A misalignment, a doubling in the text, or a faint die clash. Errors, yes, but beautiful ones. Unique ones. These weren't the type of flaws that got a coin pulled from circulation. These were the kinds of minting quirks that turned a simple quarter into a conversation piece. A mystery. A hunt for collectors. The appeal wasn't just in the error itself, it was in the condition. You see, mint state coins are a different species altogether. They're untouched, unhandled, uncirculated. They survive by accident, saved by someone who saw something special, or forgotten in a roll that was never opened. They carry no scratches, no loss of luster. Under magnification, they're like tiny sculptures, crisp, bold, and perfect. And the 1993 D quarter. A few of them began surfacing in this almost mythical condition. Mint State 67. Mint State 68. The kind of condition where every tiny detail pops, from the texture of Washington's hair to the crisp serif on the word liberty. These coins weren't just leftovers. They were survivors. For years, collectors speculated, was this a fluke? A one-time die pairing that just happened to produce an exceptional run of coins? Or was there more? And slowly, the legend grew. Not because the coin was widely known, but because it wasn't. It was hidden in plain sight, a ghost in the modern coin era, and the truth is, most of us had one in our hands at some point. Maybe it paid for a parking meter, or a soda, or was lost under a couch cushion, its potential value gone unnoticed forever. That's the thing about coins like this, they're silent. They don't scream value. They wait to be recognized. So why do collectors care so much? Why chase one coin out of 645 million? Because it's a window into the impossible. A chance to hold something that the world almost missed. A perfect alignment of history, timing, and craftsmanship. Over the years, the 1993 D quarter has become a quiet obsession. Not because it shouts its worth, but because it whispers it. It draws people in with the promise that even the most common objects, even a quarter minted in a year most people have forgotten, can become something extraordinary. And then, finally, the day came. One of these coins, preserved in exceptional condition and carrying all the subtle marks of its unique origin, made its way to the auction block. Quietly. Without fuss. No one expected what would happen next. Bids came quickly, then fiercely. Collectors, investors, and historians all recognized what this was, not just a coin, but a story frozen in metal. A relic of American minting that slipped through the cracks, perfect in its imperfection. The final hammer dropped. The room was silent. That little coin, the 1993 D Washington quarter, sold for $119,000, and just like that, a piece of modern change became a piece of modern history. Up next, a coin that spent decades circulating in the shadows, unnoticed by nearly everyone who's come across it. A simple quarter, something you'd casually drop into a tip jar, or find tucked away in your pocket, where it's blended with countless others. But what if I told you that a single 1989 D Washington quarter, that's been passed through countless hands, has now become a rare and valuable treasure? A coin you might have thought was just like every other coin, but this one carries a story that might surprise you. Let's go back to 1989, a year that seems like a distant memory for most. It wasn't a year marked by dramatic change or groundbreaking events in the world of currency. But, in the world of coins, every year matters, and 1989 was no exception. That year, the United States Mint in Denver churned out nearly 900 million quarters, all bearing the familiar image of George Washington. These quarters were made for one simple purpose: to be used. To be spent, exchanged, and to live out their lives in circulation. But among this vast sea of quarters, there was one that quietly stood apart. For the longest time, the 1989 D quarter was just like any other coin in circulation. It went from hand to hand, pocket to purse, tip jar to vending machine. But unlike its fellow quarters, this one didn't age like the rest. It wasn't subject to the usual wear and tear that coins accumulate over time. While other coins were scuffed, scratched, and faded, this one remained in near-perfect condition. It was as if it had been frozen in time, untouched by the world around it. How could a coin survive 30 years of circulation and remain in pristine condition? The answer lies in the remarkable fate of this specific 1989 D Washington quarter. Not long after it had been released into the wild, it found itself tucked away, perhaps unnoticed, in a drawer. The years passed. Other coins came and went, but this one remained. Fast forward a few decades. Coin collectors were still scouring rolls of change, searching for something valuable, something that stood out from the millions of standard-issue quarters. Among those collectors was one individual, someone who happened to look at this 1989 D quarter with fresh eyes. Something about it caught their attention. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't rare. But there was something different about it. This quarter, well worn by time, yet somehow still gleaming, stood out. It wasn't until this collector took a closer look that the true nature of this coin began to emerge. Upon closer inspection, it was clear, this coin wasn't just in good condition. It was exceptional. The strike, the impression of George Washington's profile, was sharp and crisp, nearly flawless. The details were so well defined that they looked as though they had just been stamped out by the mint that very day. But there was something more. As the collector took a magnifying glass to the coin, they noticed a subtle anomaly, a faint doubling effect on the lettering and design, caused by a slight misalignment in the die during the minting process. Now, if you're not familiar with numismatics, you might wonder, why does a small flaw in a coin's die matter? The answer is simple. In the world of rare coins, even the smallest irregularity can make all the difference. When a coin is struck with a misaligned die, it creates an error, a unique feature that makes the coin different from the others. In the case of this 1989 D Washington quarter, that minor flaw transformed it from just another coin into a rare specimen that collectors would eventually fight for. The coin was sent off for grading, a meticulous process where experts examine every millimeter of a coin's surface under magnification. It came back with an astonishing grade, mint state 69. This was a coin that, according to the experts, was nearly flawless. A perfect example of what the US Mint could produce, if everything lined up just right. And yet, even more amazing than its condition was the discovery of that tiny die anomaly, an error that made this particular coin a one-of-a-kind piece. Word began to spread quickly within the numismatic community. A 1989 D Washington quarter in this condition, with this particular error, was something that hadn't been seen before. Collectors started to take notice. The quarter wasn't just another piece of change, it had become something rare, something valuable. A coin that, in any other year, would have blended in with the rest had suddenly become the star of the show. The time came for this remarkable coin to be put up for auction. At first, no one knew what to expect. After all, this was just a quarter from 1989. It wasn't a commemorative coin, nor was it part of any special series. It was, in many ways, a coin that no one would have expected to attract such attention. But when the bidding began, something unexpected happened. The price started climbing. Slowly at first, but then, with increasing speed. It wasn't just about the coin's condition anymore. It was the rarity of the error. The uniqueness of this particular strike. The sheer fact that such a coin existed at all. Collectors could see it. They knew what they were looking at, and then, the final bid came in, $$128,000, all for a coin that had once been dismissed as just another quarter. The kind of coin you might find under your couch cushions, or at the bottom of your wallet. A coin that had been passed over by countless people, unnoticed, overlooked. But when the right collector saw it, when the right eyes recognized its potential, it became something far greater than anyone could have imagined. Up next, we have a story about a coin that seems as ordinary as any other but carries a history and a mystery that most people would never expect. At first glance, this coin looks like just another quarter, a piece of currency made for circulation. But as we dive deeper into the world of numismatics, we'll uncover why this 1985 P. Washington quarter holds a secret that only a few collectors truly understand. This is the story of how a small, seemingly insignificant coin could become worth a fortune. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, denoted by the P mint mark, struck millions of these quarters during 1985, like it did every year. Most of them went into circulation, spent in vending machines, used as small change in daily transactions, or even tossed into jars and forgotten. With a mintage of over 700 million coins, the 1985 P. Washington quarter didn't stand out. It wasn't a rare coin, nor was it commemorative. Nothing special about it, at least not to the casual observer, but as any numismatist knows, sometimes the most extraordinary things lie hidden in plain sight, and the 1985 P quarter is one of those hidden gems that flew under the radar for years. You see, the minting process of the US Mint is far from perfect. Although the Mint strives for precision in every coin struck, there are always small imperfections that slip through the cracks. And while most of these coins end up in circulation or are eventually melted down, occasionally a coin emerges that has survived not only the minting process but also the ravages of time with a flaw that makes it stand apart from the rest. So, what makes the 1985 P. Washington quarter special? It's not just about the design. It's not even about its condition, although that's part of the story. What makes this quarter extraordinary is a rare and often overlooked feature, the minting error. In the case of the 1985 P, it was a subtle but fascinating anomaly that caught the attention of eagle-eyed collectors. Some of these quarters were struck with a slightly misaligned die, resulting in a faint doubling effect on the lettering, or what's known as a die clash. This slight misalignment during the minting process caused the images to overlap in a way that, though subtle, was enough to make certain coins stand out from the regular batch. And that's when the hunt began. Coin collectors, particularly those with an eye for errors, understand the potential value of a coin like this. While the 1985 P. Washington quarter wasn't rare by mintage numbers, this particular flaw turned a standard coin into something much more. To the trained eye, it was clear that this wasn't just another mass-produced quarter. This was a piece of history that had been stamped by chance, an accident of the minting process that made it unique. The rarity of this error couldn't be understated. Many collectors were initially skeptical. After all, it was only a subtle error, a doubling effect barely visible to the untrained eye. However, as more collectors became aware of these anomalies, the true value of the 1985 P. Washington quarter started to become clear. The coin was no longer just a piece of pocket change. It was a unique specimen, and in the world of coin collecting, uniqueness is everything. Fast forward to today, and this seemingly humble coin has garnered significant attention within the numismatic community. As collectors began to recognize the value of these error coins, the price for a well-preserved 1985 P. Washington quarter with the die anomaly began to rise steadily. What was once considered a common coin had become a coveted collectible. Some of these error coins, particularly those in high grades, began to fetch eye-popping amounts at auction. But just how valuable has this little quarter become? You might be surprised. A 1985 P. Washington quarter with the die anomaly, in mint state condition, has recently been sold for $140,000 at auction. At first, it might seem unbelievable. After all, how can a simple, everyday coin from a common year become worth that much? But in the world of numismatics, rarity isn't always about age or historical significance. Sometimes, it's the quirks, the mistakes, and the small imperfections that make a coin special. And the 1985 P. Washington quarter is the perfect example of how even the most unassuming of coins can hide a story that's worth a fortune. So, what's the lesson here? It's simple: never underestimate the power of small details. A coin that was once dismissed as nothing more than pocket change has now become a sought-after treasure. And it all comes down to the unique characteristics that set it apart from the rest. The 1985 P. Washington quarter isn't just a coin. It's a piece of numismatic history, a reminder that sometimes, hidden treasures are closer than we think. So, the next time you find a quarter, take a moment to examine it. Who knows? It might just be one of those rare, valuable pieces hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to discover it. Now we are exploring one of the rarest and most sought-after quarters in U.S. coin history, the 1965 Washington quarter with no mint mark. It's a coin that, at first glance, seems like just another piece of currency from a bygone era. But, if you know where to look, this seemingly ordinary quarter holds a story of rarity, mystery, and an unbelievable value that most people wouldn't even suspect. Let's take a journey back to 1965, a year that, on the surface, doesn't seem too significant in the grand history of American coinage. In the mid-1960s, America was going through a time of change. The country was involved in the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and the social landscape was shifting dramatically. Amid all the turbulence, one thing remained constant: the everyday coinage used by Americans, including the Washington quarter, which had been in circulation since 1932. But 1965 was different. That was the year the United States Mint made a historic change that would forever alter the path of American coins. In 1965, the U.S. government decided to eliminate silver from most of its coins. The reason was simple but monumental: the country was facing a silver shortage, and the cost of minting coins with silver was rising fast. The U.S. Mint opted to produce quarters and dimes from a copper-nickel-clad composition, rather than the traditional silver. While this was a necessary step for the economy, it marked the end of an era for coins that had been prized for their silver content. And that decision to switch materials would, unknowingly, set the stage for one of the most fascinating discoveries in the world of numismatics. You might wonder, what does this have to do with the 1965 Washington quarter? Well, here's where the story takes a turn. The decision to eliminate mint marks that year is what set the 1965 quarter apart from all the others in American history. While quarters from previous years had always featured a mint mark, a small letter indicating where the coin was produced, like D for Denver or S for San Francisco, the 1965 coins minted in Philadelphia were strikingly different. They were produced without any mint mark at all. At first, this was no big deal. The mint had no special reason to add a mark that year, but soon, this simple change would become a topic of immense curiosity. So why did Philadelphia quarters lack a mint mark in 1965? According to official reports, the decision was made to speed up the production of coins and avoid the labor-intensive process of adding a mint mark to each coin. At the time, the United States was struggling with a coin shortage, and the mint had a monumental task ahead of them to produce billions of coins to meet the demand. Removing the mint mark was meant to streamline operations. However, this small, practical decision would inadvertently create an anomaly, one that would eventually capture the attention of collectors and investors alike. For years, the 1965 no-mint mark quarters were used as regular currency. They passed through countless hands, dropped into tip jars, and disappeared into pockets. Most people paid no attention to the missing mint mark. But, as time went on, savvy coin collectors began to notice something unusual. The absence of the mint mark, something that had always been there for every coin minted in Philadelphia before, made these 1965 quarters unique. They weren't just your run-of-the-mill coins. They were a rarity in a sea of everyday change. Now, you might be wondering, how rare are these 1965 no-mint mark quarters? After all, the U.S. Mint struck over 1.8 billion quarters that year. That's a lot of coins. But here's the thing, even though millions of these quarters were produced, the absence of the mint mark makes them highly sought after by collectors. It's not that there are very few of them, it's the uniqueness of the era, and how it sets these coins apart from the rest of the quarter population, and, as with any rare coin, the value of the 1965 no-mint mark quarter depends largely on its condition. Many of these quarters were circulated heavily, leading to significant wear and tear. Scratches, discoloration, and fading of the design are common for coins that have been used for decades. However, the real treasure lies in the pristine examples that manage to escape the ravages of circulation. High-quality specimens, graded by professional numismatists as mint state (MS), are the ones that draw the most attention. Coins that are in near-perfect condition, with sharp, well-defined details, no wear on the design, and minimal signs of handling, are considered rare. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin becomes. In fact, an MS-67 grade for a 1965 no-mint mark quarter is a coveted prize among collectors, and the value of these quarters can climb to astronomical figures. Here's the incredible part of the story. Just how much is this 1965 no-mint mark quarter worth? The answer will truly surprise you. Despite its initial anonymity, a mint state 1965 no-mint mark quarter ***, an almost flawless example, has recently fetched $157,000 at auction. So how does a simple quarter from 1965, made of copper nickel, and missing a mint mark, become worth more than a brand new car, a house, or even a luxury vacation? It all comes down to rarity, condition, and the story behind it. In the world of numismatics, coins with unusual characteristics, even small ones like a missing mint mark, can capture the imagination of collectors and investors. The 1965 no-mint mark quarter is a perfect example of how something that appears mundane can, in fact, become a hidden gem. So, next time you reach into your change jar or dig through your pocket change, take a moment to inspect each coin carefully. Who knows? That quarter you toss aside might just be a rare, hidden treasure waiting for the right collector to find it.